Dear Rental Scale Up members, today we are going to be talking about US trends. We'll be talking about data, we'll look at charts, but also we'll be discussing things, what we see here in the market. We have special guests this time around. We have Jim Stewart. He's the CEO, co-founder of VacayMyWay. And we have Heidie Henriksen. She's the VP of Business Development of VacayMyWay as well. Let me just first welcome them to our little show. Jim, Heidie, welcome. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much, Thibault. Thanks for inviting us over, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to your clientele.
Sure thing. And as I said, VacayMyWay is a new platform in a way. So we're talking about US trends. And I think one of the US trends that during the crisis, the pandemics actually, so I think a window opened for new platforms in a way. So can you maybe introduce what the platform is, what you guys do over there?
Sure. Well, Vacay, as the industry grew, it grew very quickly. And we feel that as it progressed, it left a sort of a vacuum underneath that as the new technology really caught fire and took off, just like every industry in a high growth phase, it took off very rapidly. And, the top players were blowing and going, as they say, and trying to meet demand and watching, as they see that the market just really take off. You kind of have to go with it and jump and go. And as that market matures, naturally, then things start happening on the second level, right? I mean, and for us specifically, we saw the customer service aspect begin to have some cracks in it, right? With response times, with booking issues, money transfer issues, cancellation issues, and this, Thibault, obviously, is really where COVID, hit. I call it, it's a black swan event that occurred that nobody was anticipating. And that resulted in exposing, I think, a lot of the cracks in the foundations of how we transfer money, how clear are our cancellation policies, and really, how do we protect people in a downtime? How do you protect the traveler, and for us especially, how do you protect the host, and how do you staff for a black swan event that really shakes the industry kind of to its core? So, we kind of went to school on that and said, okay, well, in any industry, your overall philosophy can save you. And that's where we came up with the simplicity factors for refund policies and payment policies, really, on when all those occur. Now, Heidie and I, we both have background on the host side of the industry, and we realize how important it is for, quick payouts. Because a lot of people are, everybody experiences cash flow issues in one way or the other. It's just how well you handle those. And, we feel it's extremely important to be transparent, trustworthy, and allow people to be able to plan without any doubt how that cash flow was going to work. My thoughts are here, you just need to have an absurd level of customer service. With regard to response times and those types of things, and you have to plan for these, these sort of black swan events. And I think that's where we saw the opening for Vacay to come in, is that as the industry's matured, it didn't really drag customer service along with it. And I come from the customer service world; it's extremely important to us, and that's why long-term customer relationships, both on the traveler side and on the hosting side, are extremely important to us, and that's really our niche is customer service.
So we'll be talking, I think, during this little session about how VacayMyWay is changing a bit the rules about compared with the other platforms that exist. And right. But it's so interesting as well. That's why you're here. Is that So I'm going to deep dive now with some charts and graphs for the data of the US market. But I'm very happy to have you here because you sent me a list of trends that you're seeing in the market. I was like, yes, that's happening. Finally, somebody's talking about it. And the second thing is that the data I'm about to share, which is data provided by AirDNA. So thank you, AirDNA, once again. This data is, up until end of December, maybe early January. So obviously you may have, more data about what's happening right now in the US. So you can even complement what we're going to be talking through. So let me start sharing and showing the slides. Can you see all right? Okay. All right. So US trends. So yeah, it's a lot of things. Again, as usual, when you read the article, you have the actual text, you have time to read all this. What it really just means here is that compared with, we did something about Europe yesterday, obviously completely different picture in the US. In the US, 2021 was the best year ever for the industry. And this again, despite a lot of cities being terribly hit. So it kind of tells you what was happening meanwhile in the traditional vacation rental markets to make up for this disaster in cities. So demand in December was still about 30% up compared with 2019. So which is obviously pretty good. Oops, sorry. And that's even obviously 50% above 2020. That's not surprising for a lot of people, but we'll see as well that how high can you actually grow? That's going to be an issue. But what's important as well, we're going to see that the data is that revenues have been also very high, and it was a combination of both high occupancy and high ADR. What's interesting with the data we have for AirDNA that we're going to go through right now, we're going to see we're going to be asking ourselves whether that's going to be lasting this year. VacayMyWay had your big bad logo here. We talked about you guys already. That's great. So again, this is data from AirDNA. So once again, what you can see here is data where AirDNA is comparing situation in 2019. So they're using as a base the data before the pandemic. And then they're comparing month by month, what was happening in that month compared with 2019. So what we see basically in the US specifically is that overall the demand was still lower than 2019 up until, let's say, spring. And that's for the US overall, right? Meanwhile, in traditional vacation rental markets, it was, since January last year, it had been record breaking month after month, right? But overall in the market, what you see in red, it meant that the growth, the change basically in demand was higher throughout the year, especially since the spring for the overall market, again, even with cities being down. So it's pretty impressive, especially if you compare with Europe barely made up, reached 2019 levels in October of that year. Right. Most interestingly, and Jamie, I will also want to have you chime in here. What obviously we can expect, as I was saying, is that situation is different according to location. So same thing here, AirDNA is comparing data pre-pandemic, basically 2019 with situation now. And what you can see in terms of demand is that the demand for areas like small city or destination, like resort areas, mountains, lake, even mid-sized cities, the demand actually was higher than 2019. And even if you look, for example, for, let's say, small city rural, it means it was more than 50% higher in December 2021 than in December 19, more than 50% higher. That's completely crazy. Meanwhile, in cities, things are still down. We're still down more than 20% in large cities. But as you can see, that's a yellow line. It's trending up. It is trending up. So it is recovering, even though Omicron is was starting to hit the US in December, it means the recovery will be here. James, it's something you see, when you see this graph, anything surprising to you, or any contrast you can bring or agreement?
Yeah, sure. You know, and I think if you look back all the way to the left side of the graph, you see that while there is a difference between the destinations, it's not nearly the amplitude of separation that you have in current day. So, you know, I think as you mentioned, that's a functionality of concerns with COVID, with travel restrictions, with masking restrictions in the United States, and those types of things. I think it's also a change in philosophy of people with more of a YOLO type thought process, and that, you know, we all kind of deal with our mortality in different ways. And I think a lot of people are now looking at it with respect to, you know, let's get out and travel now while we have time, right? And so how do you do that within the constraints of you know, travel restrictions, those types of things? So yeah, we see the you know, overall people trying to establish still some kind of type of social distancing, which is probably the most effective way to, you know, to work our way around these processes, and establish separation. And at the same time, they want to you know, keep these relationships together with family and friends and those types of things. And so the best way to do that, obviously, is to go to a short-term you know, rental that doesn't have the shared spaces that a hotel might have. And then we're also doing those in a kind of a bucket list style, right? Where people are wanting to go to mountains and you know, seaside resorts, and even smaller. You know, you notice that the suburban areas surrounding large cities are still doing really well. So, you know, a lot of travel that may be closer to their original domicile, but at the same time, you know, it's a getaway, and it's a getaway where they can go with family and what they feel to be a safe environment.
In terms of supply,
overall, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just wondering, in terms of supply, VacayMyWay, are you guys, do you have more like, what kind of supply do you have when you look at this graph? Are you more like a traditional vacation rental markets? Do you have some urban? What's it like on your platform?
Yeah, interestingly, you know, when we first started, you know, onboarding properties, and you know, again, we're just a couple of quarters away from launch. You know, we looked at where people would likely be traveling, and we saw the you know, the pent up demand for travel to be highly vacation oriented, which, you know, beach, mountain, those types of things, which is exactly what you're seeing on the chart. So right, yeah, and that was kind of our focus. But you know, I feel overall that this is a direction the industry is going to continue to go. I don't see it slowing down at all. In fact, I see it accelerating as we get into the adoption curves of you know, late majority adopters into this. You know, it's hilarious to me that it's called new technology when it's really, our business has been around for, you know, 3,000 years. But you know, the application of technology to allow this to happen is all that's really new. But I do see, and you can read it in, you know, AirDNA does some fantastic jobs with charting and data collection, that, you know, millennials and Gen Z are much more likely to adopt this style of travel. And people in my generation, I'm a very, very late baby boomer, I'm probably the last one born, that you know, we're kind of a late stage adopter crowd in a lot of ways with technology, but not so in this case.
And what's interesting also to what you're talking about is that over the last 2 years, a lot of people, regardless of technology, but a lot of people adopted vacation rentals as well, right? A lot of people discovered, which is, again, for people, that's also why I like having you on board. And when we're talking about the trends you have, is that we've been in the industry for a while. We think we know it, and then we actually sometimes forget that some people are just discovering it. And for some guests, for some, it had been the first time they were staying in a vacation rental. What do you mean there's no front desk? How do I get the keys? All the things you thought, you know, people who come year after year, all they know all that. So then you had all these pesky people asking all these questions. And I guess, especially on a customer service viewpoint, so then you had all these questions back, and people, that's time and money spent on educating also this part of the market. So it's also very interesting what we saw is that the adoption of the, and do you think people who had a taste of the vacation rental market, do you think they will stay with us in the coming years?
Well, I think absolutely. The value proposition for us versus a hotel stay is not even on the same planet, so to speak. And it's when you look at really vacay is, it's all about value, and we're trying to increase that value proposition. With our low cost commission structure, no guest fees, that gets you a pretty good start down the value path. But once we're there, they realize that the aspect of having your own kitchen. I had dinner with a family last night. They said, we're never going to go back because waking up with kids on vacation or even traveling from point A to point B, it's so much nicer to be able to have the space to, let everybody roam around, do your thing. And instead of, packing the car yet again to go out for breakfast, you walk into the kitchen. We always, when we're on a business trip with our company, we stay in vacation rentals. And the amount of team building and bonding that occurs, in that process is during that process of just being together in the same location is really priceless. So to me, I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing at all. One of the things that we're trying to do is kind of get out of the way between the host and the guest with respect to those check-in procedures and those types of things. We don't scrub information, and we let the host and guest talk because we really can't add value to that part of the equation. We can only kind of slow it down. So part of our business model is to get out of the way and let hosts do what they do best, which is provide great hospitality and let those issues be handled the quickest and most efficient way possible.
On that note, actually, I wanted to point out that there's a lot of travelers that try vacation rentals for the first time that are just getting introduced to it now. And there are pain points that they might experience that might dissuade them from booking again. That's what VacayMyWay is really trying to address, from the transparency piece when the initial booking process happens and you're hit with all sorts of fees at the end, to not able to speak to your host when you need to before booking. So there's a lot of nuances that we're really trying to make sure we address so that we do welcome those travelers back into the vacation rental world.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. I'd love to talk about. We'll talk about this. Let me go through this slide and we'll talk about this. Also, maybe something I disagree with and something I saw on your website, but the booking fees. Because full disclosure, I worked for 4 years at Booking.com. So sometimes I'm like, oh, those resort fees in the US, what is this? And it's the property managers who put these fees, not the platform. So we'll talk about that because I find it fascinating and it's something that you guys are addressing really, really well. So we need to talk about that. So quickly through this. So I think that was something, and AirDNA is sharing the top 10 highest occupancy markets in December. Obviously, the big thing that's interesting, as we all know, Hawaii was hit so hard. The market, basically in 2020, the island was closed, basically key points during the year. So 2021, especially December, not only did they recover, but they're really, really high into the occupancy. That's pretty good. US Virgin Islands as well did pretty well, which is interesting. I have property in the Caribbean. I can tell you Americans were all over the Caribbean. That's for sure. They were traveling. And then we have the usual suspects, like the warmer areas, as well as maybe also as well Tennessee. By the way, Gatlinburg is here. Any surprise for you when you see these top 10?
I'm a little surprised that there aren't really any mountain destinations on there, because December can still be a phenomenal month for a ski vacation. But what this is telling me is Americans obviously were wanting a warm, sunny beach destination instead to get that out of their, get that fixed. And then maybe they do the ski vacations later.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of pent up demand in Hawaii, because they were completely shut down, as you said, last year. And those, tropical bound Randy Wolf over there, I mean, they're usually dealing with 100% occupancy. They book almost everything, not 100, but they're very, very high occupancy. So I think a lot of that yellow pinup revenge travel demand affected those numbers.
Now, what's interesting is that AirDNA for next year is this year is forecasting occupancy that will be slightly lower than last year. Again, this is where when we look at data, it's always important to step back and say, what are we looking at? Again, that's the occupancy for the overall US market, right? Meaning how full, if I may say so, how full will the short-term rentals be in the US in 2022? Why do they think it will basically stagnate or even decrease a bit? Well, because first, they think that there will be a bit more supply. For example, the available listings will grow again in the cities, right? They will come back to the market. Not all of them will be full, so occupancy may go down. They're expecting also as well that some demand, we just talked about this. We said some people discovered short-term rentals or stayed in the US, the domestic market, but maybe this year in 2022, some people may want to go back to hotels. Or some people may want to travel abroad, right? They flew to Hawaii and maybe right now they're preparing vacation in Europe. So who knows? That could also drive down occupancy, especially that's what they're saying. And I don't know if you agree with that, especially in the shoulder season, right? September, October, really amazing. They think they can't predict weather. Maybe it would be just as good. Maybe remote working would be just as popular. People would stay again. We stay in vacation rentals in October and September, October, because this really drove occupancy up over the year. But that's what they're expecting, slightly lower because basically a bit more supply and they don't really know whether demand will be as high in the fall. Do you think it makes sense on your side?
Well, sure. I think this is totally a math equation, right? You're exactly right. It's supply and demand. Yeah, I mean, that's a flattening, which may be slightly concerning, but to your point, the numerator denominator relationship here is that I think you are seeing a lot of inventory increasing because people are it's an early adopter phase of hosting as well. And, the total addressable market, I think, Motley Fool mentioned this year is something along the lines of 2.1, trillion. So there's a huge uptick still available on the demand, on the supply side of the curve. And I think that's what you're seeing, that more and more people are coming into this. On the downside, you've got, municipalities that are working towards more regulation. That is totally understandable. There's some pushback from the hotel industry that we're dealing with that right now in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, that, the hotels don't want us there. But to me, it's it's a foregone conclusion. They can argue against it just like people argued against Uber in Chicago and New York and San Francisco. That the demand and the push side is so much stronger than the resistance that it makes so much more sense that it will prevail. So you've got a lot of noise in that number, but I think overall the trends are going to continue, and this may be a slight stagnation and or a slight mismatch of supply and demand, but the market always wins, and the demand for vacation travel will continue. And thankfully and amazingly, there is such an open inventory of available properties that this doesn't concern me at all, actually.
And what we saw, to your point, what we saw earlier is that demand is coming back to urban rentals, but in cities like New Orleans, for example, New Orleans still has 30% fewer listings now that it had 2 years ago, right? So it means and some of it maybe is gone forever. Regulations are here, or maybe some are in long-term market. Maybe it will come back. On the other hand, you can't evict people just because the market is back. So it may take some time for some properties to come back to the market. The last slide I want to show here is what's happening on the market, what they're seeing. And that's, again, as of the 1st of January, the data was. So looking at the time AirDNA was saying for the first quarter, looking at here at the booking pace. So we're looking at how many bookings property managers already had in the future. For example, as of 1st of January, how many bookings, how many nights people had sold, or for the first quarter and for the second quarter. So looking at this, basically, for the first quarter, compared with, for example, last year, they already had sold 70% more nights for stays in the first quarter. And compared with last year, it was already 88% more nights for stays in Q2 that had been booked by trends. So what's very interesting here is that, so does it contradict what we saw about the occupancy? Yes and no, in the sense that one explanation could be that people got burned last year and they're like, oh, wow, we booked way too late and all these nice places we wanted to go to, they were booked up, way too expensive. We're going to book right now and just get ready. So that could be that. Also, compared with last year, probably there's also more confidence. The people are more confident they can actually book something and stay. So the increase of confidence, I think you mentioned earlier, Jim, and probably the fact that people know supply may be short, means that people are booking. And probably as well, cancellation policies are still flexible. So people also have a sense that they're not taking such a big risk that they can cancel. What do you think of that? It's something you're seeing as well. And I'm going to stop sharing here.
Sure. Well, yeah, you're right. I think, as you see that line for 2021, I think people have reacted in response to, how do you make the travel more risk-free? And, you do that with good cancellation policies, some booking window variability there with his levels of confidence are going to extend that booking window out. And I think, of course, that's bolstered by good policy and changes in refund and reliability. I think also, the factor that people are getting more used to having COVID as part of life, and we work our way around it. Omicron obviously was a big scare, and it's an issue. So it's not an insurmountable issue, and I think it's as people just come to accept this as a kind of new normal that we'll work through the issues. But one thing people are not going to do is stay home, no matter how often and how loud the cry is to do what you're going to do. People are social, and they're going to enjoy life. They're going to go out and visit, and multifamily get-togethers are going to happen in vacation rentals. So I think that's where that return of demand is coming from.
I think the consensus of that data, really the word that comes to mind for me is normalizing, because we saw this incredible roller coaster ride that happened in the US with vacation rentals. And now we're kind of coming back to that normal chain of growth. And it will still continue to increase, but probably just not quite so exponentially, because depending on where you go in the United States, certain areas are very mask mandate heavy. Other areas, it's completely different, and masks are barely even seen when you go out in public. So there's a pretty big variance there. And yeah, varying levels of people's safety and comfort for sure. But normalizing is what we're seeing, where at least the growth is continuing, maybe not quite so aggressively though.
So we've just looked at the recent data and we talked about changes in the market, things getting normalized, like the new normal is here. What are the big trends that you've seen at VacayMyWay in terms of like changes disrupting the market?
Well, sure. The overall change is still just astounding to me at the size of the market, the total addressable market, and where that's going to go. As the technology gets better and better, I think is going to be part of the key. And that is, how do you find the right property? We spend a lot of time thinking about property matching and how does that algorithm work in our search engine? Should it be maximizing, click-throughs or putting the most popular properties out front? Or is it about more, matching the right property to the right client? And so, our amenities list, for example, has things like, how fast is your Wi-Fi? Are you, addressing the people that are working on the road now and need streaming? What kind of coffee maker do you have? How close are you to a hotel? Those types of things. But we see this. So in some respects, I think we look at 2019 and we're trying to back to look at that data and from an analogy type viewpoint, and we really need to think about where the market is going and how we can affect that with the technology. So I think to some extent we need to stop using 2019 as a reference point and just realize that we're kind of treading, it's like landing on Mars. We're completely in new territory here with respect to a lot of things. Buy now, pay later is something that we've talked about a lot. How do you make it easy, remove every barrier of sale, to try to get that pushed, and we're working with some partners to get that done. We see a lot, thanks to the data from AirDNA and other sources, that you see the transitions happening, and you see the millennial Gen Z thought processes, and the number of people that have been exposed to the new technology continues to increase. And I think that bodes well for the industry, because as that generation transitions into more and more money, more disposable income, they already expend a much higher percentage of their disposable income on travel and experiences than, for example, the boomers did. And I think that, clearly that's going to continue. We're early into the market there. And as, those people have kids and transition to the travel, the mainstream, bulk of the travelers, then it's only going to continue to increase demand for us. You talked about flexibility with response to travel plans. Yeah, obviously that's going to continue. But that's just really good customer service, right? And I think that's part of I know that our philosophy on this travel portion of it, on the flexibility portion, is we really have no value to add there. We can only get in the way with excessive, policy and kind of decisions by proxy, when really a lot of those decisions need to be made between a client and the host. And so, we let the host do what they do with, refunds and those types of things. And it's really should be completely up to them. It's all we're doing is connecting travelers and hosts. And there's not a whole lot of value add we can do other than to make that as transparent as possible and make all that communication happen and let hosts do what they do best.
If I'm correct, right, when you say you helping own property managers, let's say, and guests connect directly, does it mean that? Let me go back to something that happened. Something that happened, of course, in March 2020, is that a lot of people, property managers and owners, felt betrayed by some of the platforms, right? Because they got their arms twisted. They were forced to refund things that were not refundable. And I was working at booking.com at that time, and they were doing this. And they were even taking money out of bank accounts of some people. And I was like, yeah.
They definitely created a stir. Absolutely. And that's where we've decided to have this approach of, we're going to not play Big Brother. We're going to connect these two individuals, the traveler and the host, and then allow them to make those decisions. Only get involved when it becomes an escalation type of scenario. But other than that, we really want to just connect the two and not get in the middle.
So do you think that storm created, again, an opportunity as well for other platforms to say, hey, we're different?
Absolutely. I mean, it gave us one of multiple niches that we could bring to the table that people were very frustrated about. So it definitely created an opportunity.
Something else.
I think it gave us
Go ahead, Jim.
It's an obvious first principle for us. And that is, really, what are we doing here? We're connecting hosts and travelers, and we're using technology to do something that's been done for 3,000 years. So the less friction we can create in that space of allowing the host to provide outstanding hospitality and a great value, that's kind of our job, is to expedite that process, expedite that communication process, handle the money transfer, take some of the risk out. We're doing host verification and guest verification through a partnership company that is reducing risk. And so, I'm big on risk management, and I think that was one of our initial. You have to look at every aspect of your business from a risk management perspective. And I think the more that you can reduce that, it flows all the way down to individual traveler decisions. How much risk are they willing to tolerate? They're going to, as you said, it's a new platform. And the more transparent you can make the property presentation with regard to location and amenity searching, so really you're talking about meeting expectations and reducing, the fear factor with coming into a new platform or expanding into a new property. So it's to us, it's all about it's all about risk management.
You mentioned flexibility, and I think there's another maybe the last big trend I would like to have you talk through it. I know that you sent me this email with all these trends. I was like, wow. And one is the buy now, pay later. It's also, to me, part of the flexibility in the sense that in e-commerce world over the last 2 years, people have gotten used to see the logos of Klarna, Affirm, all these companies on big e-commerce platforms, providing more flexibility on how people can pay, maybe paying through installments, for example. And suddenly when you have to book a vacation rental for 2 weeks for a big group, you can actually afford it now, or it's easier for you to pay for it. And these things are coming to the industry, and actually they are there, right? Vacasa or Vrbo, they allow that. So I would love to have your view on that. And how can I, as a small property manager, how can I ever compete? Do I have also to align with this technology? What should I do?
It's a very important part of what we're doing. And split payments, or how do you coordinate it with a big group of people? And those types of technologies are clearly going to increase the value of the booking relationship. And that's really part of what we do, is how do you provide enough value on platform to ensure that people stay on platform. And that is, part of our transparency is, people are going to book off platform. They're going to go direct when they can in an attempt to save money. So, our thoughts are that if we're not providing enough value to our clients and hosts, then we're doing something wrong. So, our property and client host verification processes, ID verification, and damage waiver policies. I mean, we have a $5 million, damage waiver protection. And so those are the kind of the sticky portions of our platform that provide enough value to keep people on platform. And obviously the more barriers for sale that you can remove, which one of those for us is no requirement to have a damage deposit. Right. So if, a family's trying to, if you got a $3,000 budget and they find a place for $2,500, but they're asking for a $1,000 damage deposit waiver, that puts them over budget. So, and then, hosts are dealing with refunding budgets and, looking at damage and those kinds of things. And we just provided that protection included on every booking. So I think that's part of how you remove barriers to sale with regard to the industry. And obviously, being able to do buy now, pay later is an important part of being able to do that, because people want to be able to budget for vacations. A large part of the research is that, the kind of orchestrator of life person that is at home planning the vacation needs to know what the budget's going to be and how they're going to, cash flow the vacation. And I think that's anything you can do to make that better, and we're working very hard to accomplish those the removal of those barriers.
A question for you as well on transparency, because I know it's a big value, big thing for VacayMyWay, is that what I discovered at Booking.com, for example, when I was working there, is that it's always very hard actually for travelers to understand fees, right? For them to understand, for example, Booking.com has no guest fee. I think it's VacayMyWay either. Airbnb, depending on the markets, but in US, yes, most of the time they do have a fee. But it's a service fee, and some people don't know whether it's the property manager paying this, and then you have the cleaning fees. And for example, Airbnb got a lot of flack because they had like very high cleaning fees. And I was like, well, it's not Airbnb who's making up these cleaning fees. It's the property owner or manager. They are the ones paying these fees. But again, I think it's very hard for travelers to understand who's putting this. For example, a resort fee. I didn't know what a resort fee was before working at Booking.com, because we don't really have those in the European market. But in the US, it's something people do. And that's what some property managers add. You're right. And it means like a platform like Booking.com that's European is not really well equipped to know where to display these kind of additional fees, which is very interesting as well. So how do you educate? Transparency is important, but how do you educate then guests on what this fee means? How should they know that so they actually understand what they're seeing?
We make it very simple and transparent. It's essentially a cleaning fee, and that's the only option to charge with VacayMyWay. I went to book a property recently. There was a linen fee, there was a resort fee, there was an admin fee, there was a service fee. There was 5 different fees that completely changed my budget. And that approach was infuriating. And that's exactly what we're trying to eliminate with VacayMyWay. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's customary in our industry for OTAs to charge a commission on the cleaning fee that's going to the host. And again, that's something we don't allow or do. So we're not trying to take revenue away from our hosts by any means. We're trying to make it affordable for the guest. And we're still trying to put the maximum revenue in the pocket of the host and have a small percentage on top of that, right? There's plenty of room, plenty of fish in the sea for us to all capitalize on this industry. So that's what we're trying to do without getting a little too greedy.
Mm. In the US, I think Booking.com, for example, has eliminated the resort fee. There was a lot of pushback. How do you talk with homeowners this time? You talk about education or property managers. How do you tell them, you know what, not on a platform because transparency is better, is more conversion, is fewer questions from the guests for everyone? How do you convince people to go your way?
Well, sure, and that's exactly the issue. You know, the industry is kind of changed into you know, if you're doing a meta search, you know, it's all about bottom line. You know, it's all about who can show the lowest price, right? And it's, you know, but you know, it's sort of the Amazon business model too. Now, Amazon's not necessarily the least expensive on everything they sell, but Amazon is also wrapped in a package of fantastic customer service, right? With very low risk to you know, things not working out the way. You know, the big fail for a vacation planner is to show up and the property's not the same. And there's additional fees, like, you know, you show up on an airline and they want to charge you $75 to get your bag from point A to point B when you only paid $75 for your ticket. That seems a little absurd. And that really, you know, in the short term that works out, but in the long term, that's not a great customer service play at all. It's you know, it's a sticker shock. It's you know, death by fee structure, and that's you know, our goal is to just provide absolutely absurd customer service. And that includes getting to the point of sale and not being floored by a fee structure. So yeah, we may be, you know, industry lead on this, but I think that's where the industry is going to go with, you know, Heidie's, in both of ours really is transparent pricing has got to be, that's the first step in the trust process. And I'm not interested in a one-time booking client. I want a client that books with Vacay for life, so that we can be the sales funnel that everyone wants to be a part of, because we are trustworthy. And trustworthy, transparency, you know, ease of use and profitability for hosts is what we're shooting for here. And you know, we think we've got the price structure where a host can charge a little bit more for their property up front. But due to the low booking fee structure, then they should be able to also get the checkout with the most value for the client, and the lowest bottom line checkout price without any sticker shock. And that's, you know, that's how you know, stick within your total budget right there is, no surprises at checkout. And, I was just on Twitter this morning reading about, fee frustrations, and people are using a lot of bad words associated with fees that we don't need to get into, but, nobody likes it, and nobody wants to surprise it at checkout. Doesn't matter if you're buying a car or buying a vacation.
There is a lot of people are accustomed to, on the host side of anyway, putting in a lot of different fees to create additional revenue streams for themselves. And so we try to educate them up front when they go to list on Vacay. As you walk through the process in our user interface, you have little pop-ups that are explaining why we do things the way that we do, in case somebody didn't quite understand that initially. So it's not this huge confusion point or shock factor as you're going to list your property. It's here's how we do things, here's why we do it, here's what you can do to modify as needed to suit your revenue goals. So we try to make that very clear up front.
That's great. It's great to hear that you go to the why are they doing this, and telling them how they may, maybe, spread the cost or adapt to the platform, and why they should do that. That's
right. Cool. It's really more of a wholesale or net rate type of model adopted from the hotel industry from years ago. So we're really trying to get back to those grassroots and make the most out of it.
Cool. Thank you so much, both Jim and Heidie, on these insights on things and helping us discover VacayMyWay. If people want to reach out, know more maybe about the company or talk to you, what should they do?
Our website's the easiest place to start, VacayMyWay.com. And we do have live chat on there. So our customer support is always available. info@VacayMyWay is a great email to reach pretty much anyone on our team. So we welcome suggestions, comments. We're still a new company, so we're building out features, and we rely heavily on input from both hosts and guests. So we welcome all of that great feedback.
Perfect. Once again, Jim Stewart, you are the CEO, co-founder of VacayMyWay. Thank you for your time today. Heidie Henriksen, you are the VP Business Development, VacayMyWay. Got it right this time. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you. I think there's a little helper here, Ivy, for arranging the time for us all today. And see you all next time. We'll be talking about, again, European trends. Take care.